Right now are, we'll talk about this in a minute, but we're getting ready to put the hip board or the baseboards and the hip boards on. So if we weren't doing roll-up sides, we wouldn't put a hip board on. And in some cases, you wouldn't do that. You know, like that house there doesn't have roll-ups on it. Sometimes if people have a short house, like a 24 or a 36-foot house, they might just put big doors on both ends and be able to open those up, and that would be their ventilation. I really like roll-up sides. I think it works really well and it cools really well. So what we're going to do is put the baseboards on. It just so happened that that 2-foot mark that we made to pound down to was really close to where we want the top of the board to be. So someone asked if I planned that out, and I'd like to say that yes, when we were pounding yesterday, that was exactly what I was thinking, that when the baseboards go on, it was going to line up perfectly. So clearly it just happened to be there. If those marks weren't there, we would set the board up, kind of say, okay, where do we want it to be? I like to bury it a little bit in the ground, just because we think about rodents in the winter wanting to get in there. Like we were just talking about, it's kind of like a spa, right? There's no predators, it's warm, there's food, you know, so they do like to get in there. We do have to set traps in some cases if it gets bad, and make sure we're catching stuff and keeping it out. So we like to sink the board in just a little bit, a couple inches. We should say that, you know, for certified, those of you that are here that are certified organic probably know that for certified organic production, you can't have treated lumber in contact with the soil. So if you're not certified, then that's not that big of a concern. So I think, you know, that treated lumber, it still carries some of the things with it from when it was treated with arsenic. I think now the copper treatments that they're using, I don't see that there's that many problems with them. The arsenic, clearly there were, but still that's a rule that's in the NOP, and so that's what we're going to follow. So for here, we're not certified, so it is going to be treated lumber, and we are going to sink it down a little bit. We have seen people put some even chicken wire or some hardware cloth if they have like really bad, if they know they're going to have like groundhog problems or something like that, putting it down and out off of the bottom of that board to keep things from burrowing underneath. We also decide here that we dig down rather than build up with the soil, just because with it being as sandy as it is, if we've got a little gap, I feel like if we put that soil on there and it rains or something wants to get in, it's just going to come right into the house. So sinking it down a couple inches is fine. We've got some clamps set up that we can see will go on there. The kind of big important thing to see is, you know, how we join these are with those little foot joiner boards. So it's going to be one on here, a joiner board, and then the other one. And so we took one of those 12-bys, cut it in half, so that, and put that on each end for both sides. So what happens is that our joints are off of the bows. So if we had all 12 footers, since they're 4-foot spacing, our joints would be right where those bows were, and we couldn't put a piece behind there. So cut it and put the short pieces at each of the corner, and then we'll go on down using that line on the marker, the line on there, and we'll probably drop a level on there as we go down too, just to double check it. So once that's on, then we'll start talking about the hip boards too. There's lots of different options. You can put, you know, a piece of lumber, a 2x4, and then a single strip of this channel here that's laying on the ground that's double. They sell it just as a single strip. You can do it that way, but basically that's how we're going to lock the wire or lock the poly in, and then it's going to come down and go on a pipe that rests against the baseboard, and that's going to be, that space between there is going to be our hip boards or our roll-up space. What we look for with the hip boards, you know, we want sort of as big a space as we can get, because it does get hot in the summer, but what we don't want is you'll see when we go to stand it up, or sit it up, we don't want it up here too high. One, just because it makes it too big of an opening, and a lot of air coming through there can move things around. But more importantly, if we have them up and it's raining, we want to watch where this drip line is going to be. So if we move it down lower on this curve, that drip line is going to drip outside as opposed to being up here. And with surface tension, you know, that water rips around a little bit. And so what we don't want is water dripping on the inside and just being a big muddy mess when we walk down our aisles there. So those are kind of the hip boards and the baseboards. What we're doing here, I was told, is Norwegian plumbing. So apparently, you know, I said, well, in Michigan we call it Uper plumbing, and then someone pointed out that, well, that's the same thing. So You know, and what they would say about us is that, you know, it's troll plumbing because we live down below the bridge. Yeah. So that's kind of how it goes in Michigan. But what we're trying to do is make this plumb, or make this basically bow straight up and down. So when we go to put our end walls on, the piece is going to come like this, and we don't want it to come out or in. So what we have is this plane going across and this plane coming down. What we want to make sure is that we're either inside of the bow and inside of the bow, or outside of the bow and outside of the bow. So you can see we wrapped around this way, so if you look at that bow, we're on the outside. And then if you look at this one, we're also on the outside. What we don't want to do, again, if I'm doing it wrong, is put this one on the outside and put this one on the inside and try to figure out why there's a gap that's, you know, 1.9 inches or 1.9 inches. So again, so we drop it here. If it might end up that it needed to get pulled that way. I'm glad in this case it needs to get pulled this way, because I was trying to figure out how we were going to hook something up down there with the shed and the building and everything else. So there's a number of ways to do this, but basically, you know, we're tying something that's a weight down here to hold this line straight. And we're gonna we're gonna tie it to the car. We're gonna drive very slowly and with the windows down, and someone saying stop, stop, you know. And we're gonna try to pull this until these two lines are touching.